Bore da, welcome to today's Digital Health and Care Wales Extraordinary Programme Delivery Committee. Members will be aware that DHCW's escalation status increased from level 1 routine monitoring to level 3 enhanced monitoring on the 11th of March. Following some reviews within the board and committees, it was agreed that the Programme Delivery Committee would provide additional oversight on our escalation improvement plan, and as a result we've increased the frequency of PDC meetings going forward. They will now meet every 6 weeks rather than every quarter, and this is the first extraordinary meeting where we will focus on the plan for managing our way out of escalation. Before we start today's proceeding, I'd just like to make a couple of observations. Firstly, members won't always be looking at the screen. We do have papers and they're usually on a separate screen. So if they're not looking directly at the screen, that's because they're checking papers. And in interest of time, I will ask members to introduce themselves when they speak rather than go around the virtual table before we start. That said, I'll now proceed with the agenda. First item is apologies for absence. I have Sam Lloyd, Executive Director of Operations, and Laura Tolley, both are on leave and have tendered their apologies. I've received no declarations of interest in advance of the meeting, so I'll just pause and check to see if there's anything anyone wants to raise before we get started. Nope, great, okay, fine. Minutes of the last meeting. We have within the pack the minutes of both the public and the abridged private meeting from the last full Programme Delivery Committee. Can I just check before we approve those if anybody's got any amendments or any points of clarification they want to make before we formally approve them? Great, okay, so we'll Belinda, if you'd note, those have been formally approved. The action log, there are no actions currently on the public or the private action log. So I'll move now swiftly on to the main part of this meeting, which is the escalation status improvement plan. And I'll hand over to Chris Darling to take us through this particular item.
Yeah, Chair, thank you. I'm just going to run through a current status update and then spend a bit of time running through the milestones that we would schedule to deliver over the months of May and June, and then look ahead to the milestones that we've got planned in July and any concern areas in terms of future milestones. So just to recap, we're in escalation for major programmes under the performance and outcomes domain of the NHS Wales Oversight and Assurance Escalation Framework. We've worked closely over the last couple of months with Welsh Government to agree an improvement plan which reflects the escalation framework, and that was approved at the Integrated Quality Performance Delivery meeting with Welsh Government on the 14th of May. Internally, we've agreed as a board that this committee, as you said at the outset, Chair, would oversee and scrutinise progress against the delivery plan. We will have routine updates to the board in addition to that and continue to report to Welsh Government. So we're reporting on a monthly basis via those IQPD meetings, and we did have a meeting on the 27th of June, a joint executive meeting with Welsh Government where we covered escalation and provided an update at that meeting as well. So the Enhanced Monitoring Improvement Plan is in the paper as a link in full. It sets out our response to escalation. Within the paper, we've also done a distribution of the milestones over a period of time. And on the direction of Welsh Government, we have got the majority of the milestones between the time we were escalated, so milestones from April onwards, through to autumn sort of time. So you'll note from the milestones, there were 12 that were due to be delivered by the end of June. Of the 42 milestones included within the plan, over 30 will be delivered or are scheduled to be delivered by the end of September. So there's a lot of activity happening over the next few months in terms of milestone delivery. I do propose to run through the May and June milestones in a bit of detail and ask Ivan just to comment on those milestones. And I probably should have said, I've been asked to be the SRO for the escalation program, but the oversight in terms of delivery of the program sits within Ivan's and Sam Hall's portfolios, exec portfolios. So very much supported by colleagues today. What we've done, we've agreed with Welsh Government, we've got a shared information repository via a Teams channel. So that's accessible by DHCW staff and Welsh Government colleagues. Within that, we've got the improvement plan. And then by month, we've got the milestones due to be achieved that month, evidence to demonstrate achievement, and then a status next to each milestone as to whether they've been achieved or not. So I'm going to share my screen. It presents the same information as set out within the paper for the months of May and June, but it's just slightly more up to date since the papers were published. So if that's okay, Chair, I will share that and then start working through. So just check, is it big enough for colleagues to see, or do you want it a bit bigger?
Yeah, a tad bigger might help, Chris.
There we go.
Yep, that's fine.
Okay, so this is what, as I said, has been shared with Welsh Government. They can go in, review this, at the same time we can. So I'm going to work through, as I said, there were 6 milestones due for delivery in the month of May. So I'm just going to work through each of those. On the left-hand side, you've got the performance intervention area they relate to. Because we're doing this chronologically, we do jump about a bit in terms of the programs we're looking at. The next column, we've got the specific deliverable or milestone that we were aiming to achieve. The time frame, in this case, that'll be May or April. The output, so what's the evidence that we've achieved it. We have listed any dependencies. Again, we discussed this with Welsh Government. They were keen that where there are dependencies on other organisations or other factors, they're set out clearly within the plan. And then the evidence column, we've populated since, shared with Welsh Government. So I'm going to work through each now, Chair, and I'm going to ask Sam and Ivan to come in. So the first one is connecting care, the performance areas, connecting care to agree the scope of the business case. And the deliverable was to deliver a connecting care community and mental health OBC outline business case to be submitted to Welsh Government with programme board approval, including the commercial case by the end of May. We've marked this as complete, but Sam, do you want to just update on the current status?
Yeah, of course, Chris. Thank you. So yes, it was submitted in time. It is still with Welsh Government colleagues for review. So we haven't heard of the full outcome of the OBC, so we're still waiting on that. Although literally in the last week, we have had some movement where obviously they have taken into account the fact that we are running a programme without funding, whilst they are still reviewing the OBC. So we've been given Q1 funding to support the work and some funding to support the existing product whilst the new programme looks to procure new systems. So whilst we haven't had the full outcome, we've done our bit. We are now waiting for the full outcome from Welsh Government.
Thanks, Sam. And Chair, I don't know if you want me to work through and wait for questions or pause at the end of each milestone.
Just pause briefly for a couple of seconds, and if people want to put their hand up, I'll try and spot that.
Shall I just move on, Chris?
Yep, if you would.
Chris, Chair, David, thank you. So I think several of the next ones are for me. That reflects the nature of our escalation, which is we've been escalated for major programs. These generally are either the major national collaborative programs that we manage on behalf of NHS Wales, or things related to the effective delivery of the major national programs. There's a high degree of well, there's a lot of transparency and openness around those programs, as you know, as members from the PDC itself, which is new, but also in our engagement with Welsh Government and the way that we've been reporting to them over the last 12 months. The only other thing which I want to emphasize at the beginning, up front here, is that is our approach to escalation and optimally de-escalation is joint working with the Welsh Government, and it's quite helpful, I think, that this first action is an example of how that joint working operates, and there'll be a couple of other examples later on. So the action or the intervention area relates to the WICIS, Welsh Intensive Care Information System Programme. It's an assessment on the next steps of the programme, how it should be resourced. As a brief background, Welsh Government paused the programme in May or June, I think, of last year, commissioned an independent report, which reported in January, and in December, January, and then by February, March, we were able to restart the programme. Our Chief Executive, Helen Thomas, engaged with the Chief Execs on that restart, and also with Judith Paget, who is the JP that you can see on your screen. And in order to restart the programme and set the parameters, Welsh Government took two key actions. One was for Judith has written to all the NHS organisations, and Welsh Government have appointed a programme chair to the programme, Mandy Rayani. And then we administer and manage that programme. So we're managing the delivery within that reset framework. So we're running a series of workshops, working closely with all of the NHS organisation partners through into July and August, out of which will come a revised specification and a revised plan, which will be the next phase. So the action relates to resetting the governance, which between us and Welsh Government has happened. The workshops are in progress, and they're all on track and on timetable. So we're reporting this action as completed.
Okay, thanks. So just question
Sure.
from me, is that where we've evidenced it and turned it green, is that with agreement with Welsh Government, or is that us just saying it's complete?
Yeah, that's a good question, David. So we've turned it green and we've put it in the shared repository. I've had a discussion with the head of escalation to advise that that's what we've done. They're now working through this. If they've got any challenges or any questions in terms of the assessment and it's changed to green status, they'll come back and we'll have a discussion. We will formally approve them as complete via the IQPD meeting on the 16th of July. So there's a couple of weeks now for us to take it through this committee and for them to review, consider if they've got anything they want to pick up ahead of that meeting.
Fine. Okay. Thanks for that clarification, Chris.
Thanks. And Chris, I think I'm right to say that we provide additional supporting evidence, documents, and email trails and other things alongside. So Welsh Government see more than just the statement which is on screen here, but they see supporting evidence behind that too.
Correct.
So I'd say we've got at least a reasonable, if not a high level of confidence on the accuracy of the reporting here. But it's all part of the transparency. If Welsh Government have any concerns, then they can raise those with us. I'll move on to the next. So this is relating to major programs. We are escalated 4 major programs as a domain. The intervention area relates to reviewing the approaches and procedures that we have. The action was to complete an audit of the portfolio management office arrangements. That audit has been completed and has been reported to several of the board committees. I think it went to audit and account, or it went to the audit committee, and it also went to the programs delivery committee at its last meeting. And alongside it was an audit on the National Data Resource Programme too. Both of those reporting a reasonable assurance, which was very good to see. There's also further internal audit of programme delivery on this year's work plan, which we're scheduling in, I think, to Q3, on one for programme management in general, and there's also an audit of the cancer programme implementation on this year's programme. So I think this reflects a commitment to transparency and using the external assurance mechanisms that we have, as well as the escalation process and the board assurance mechanisms that we have.
Okay, thanks, Stephen.
Okay, good.
Just for clarity, I don't remember any significant actions coming out of those at PDC. Do you just want to confirm that?
No, well, we've got the management response to the actions. We're working through the actions and tracking them in the way that we do. Actually, that's quite a good tee-up to say that in general, our approach is trying to embed the escalation process into our regular procedures and our regular reporting. That's why we're using PDC, for example, rather than creating a whole new parallel industry, I suppose. So we're mainstreaming the way that we're managing the response. The next three items all relate to stakeholder, the stakeholder review action plan, the governance around the action plan, and the completion of the actions. The board has always been interested in this. It's why we commissioned Atos as an independent external to come in and do the stakeholder review last summer. The board was then also scrutinized and approved the action plan in response to that, and also the stakeholder engagement strategy we have in DHCW, which is separate but obviously very closely linked. Nadine and the team are reviewing this. We've also just had an external review of the stakeholder activity by Audit Wales, which was considered at the audit committee earlier on this week. So again, there's the same transparency, assurance, and support, advice, and challenge approach that we're using. So the first action, 11.1, is the stakeholder review action plan developed and approved. So it's been approved. It's been through our board assurance mechanisms and arrangements. The second is the governance arrangements that we have dedicated to that stakeholder review action plan delivery activity within the organization. So we have a governance structure in place. There's a working group and there's an oversight board, and there's also an external strategic stakeholder advisory group, which Helen chaired the first meeting of the end of June, I think. And then we're tracking the delivery of the actions that are in the action plan. I can't remember how many there are in terms of numbers, but we're reporting 30% of the DHCW milestones that are in that action plan. There are DHCW actions and there are collective actions. I think on the audit committee, I said it takes two to tango, but in Wales, you do folk dancing, and that's even more complicated. But even so, some of those actions are just for us, and this is a report on the actions that are solely for DHCW. Others are collective whole system actions relating to confirming roles and responsibilities and other aspects. So just to be clear, this is a report against the DHCW actions, and we're ahead of milestone in terms of reporting. So we've completed 30% of those against the 20% that was in the escalation plan.
Okay. I was going to ask that. So the 20% was the target, and we've overachieved with the 30%.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay. Can't see anybody with a hand up for questions.
Chair,
Just a quick point of clarification there, David, if you wouldn't mind. The various acronyms, the SHE, the SAPDG, how frequently are they meeting during this period? And is that likely to be any drag on us being able to keep to time?
I'm not 100% sure. So, well, people will know. I like to give credit where it's due. So Nadine leads the engagement action plan. Michelle is her director, so is providing additional support to Nadine. So I don't attend the groups myself directly, and Helen chairs the external stakeholder advisory panel. We thought it would really benefit from having a chief exec level of engagement. So I'm kind of covered above and below. So that's a long way of saying I'm not sure how often they meet. I'm fairly sure that the stakeholder advisory group meets less than monthly. So the external advisory group is every 6 months. The internal groups are meeting on a much more regular and often cadence. So they will be the formal ones, I think, are monthly, and then obviously Nadine's team is working through on a weekly basis.
Okay, thanks for that.
So those are the May milestones, Chair. So I just want to pause just to check with committee members that you're comfortable with the status of each of them before I move on to the June milestones.
Yes, I am, unless anybody raises their hand. We've got a thumbs up from Rowan. Yes, I think the only issue for me, Chris, is getting that formal buy-off, as you outlined. I'm happy with the status as it stands, but would just like the reassurance that Welsh Government agree with our assessment.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I just to Ivan's point earlier, I did walk through Welsh Government colleagues the file share, how each of the evidence documents links back to each of the milestones. So we've had that conversation this week. So whilst they work through it. Okay, so I'll move on to the June milestones. The first two relate to the National Target Architecture Programme. So again, I'm going to bring Ivan in just to update on those two.
Great, thank you, Diolch fawr, Chris. So this is a new project that we've established this financial year, funded, commissioned and funded by Welsh Government. So Welsh Government has commissioned DHEW to lead the development of an agreed, co-designed target architecture for Wales and a transition map or a transition roadmap from our existing architecture as it is current state through to the future, and then to deliver by the end of the year a strategic investment plan around that. To do that with, and again, this is an example of us working very closely with Welsh Government. So we worked with Welsh Government on the resourcing model for that, and agreed with them that we would appoint external suppliers to support us with a large part of that work as technical partners. Welsh Government were on the specification drafting group and also on the supplier selection, and they attend the project board, and we have a weekly catch-up with the Welsh Government policy lead on this. So we've got a very close working relationship. We worked quite a tight timetable. The contract for the supply support has been awarded to Channel 3 and AirLogic, who are working as a consortium. They were appointed and confirmed at the end of May, and so have worked through June, working to engage with digital directors, with other health organisations. They attended the last digital directors in-person event last week, for example. So that work is moving forward. That's action 1.1. The deliverable on 1.2 is to establish the project board for the National Target Architecture Project. That met, I think, Friday last week or the week before. So it's met for the first time. 1 week blends into another a little. It's all going very quickly. But I chair that. I chair that project board. All the organisations are represented, either digital directors or architecture leads, as well as Welsh Government on that project board. First meeting went well. It was a confirmation of terms of reference, but in particular, it looked at the resourcing requirements and the capacity requirement from health boards and from DHEW to get through the work that is needed. There's a really fast cycle and timetable on this work, and we need to keep up with the external consultants to a degree. So we reviewed that, and that was further reviewed by digital directors as a peer group. So I'll just pause at the end of the architecture ones before I move on to the others.
Rowan?
Yeah, just very quickly, Ivan, is there a sort of baseline rules of things like standards that we're going to be expecting this architecture to be built on?
Yes, there are. So part of the work is there are four elements to the technical work. And then there's a fifth element to the project. Ooh, fifth element. That's like a film. So the four elements to the technical work are to onboard the senior architecture professional technical community across NHS Wales onto RDoC, which is a common enterprise, common in the sense of shared, everybody using the same one, enterprise tooling platform. Our team internally in DHEW, led by Rhian Rice, had a bit of a run-up on RDoC, which we procured in the autumn of last year, in order to build the standards internal to RDoC. So the meta definitions, the category definitions, the general conceptual framework, because what we're trying to do is to get everybody speaking the same language, using the same tool that we can then keep alive. The next three phases are to assess the current state, to co-design a target state, and then to co-design a transition roadmap from the current state to the target state. That work will go on through July, August, and September. And then out of that will come a set of technical artifacts, and they inform the development of a strategic investment plan, not an OBC. I think our expectation is that strategic investment plan will contain options and will most likely contain a requirement for either a large program business case for a very quite substantial portfolio, or for a number of discrete OBCs that would then go forward to an FBC arrangement. So we've got a very clear view of the roadmap or the delivery plan for the project. It's on track at the minute, and but it will get us all onto the same tooling, which would be fantastic. Actually, it'd be really good. Very excited about the NTA project.
Great, thanks, Stephen. Just one question from me. Were there any issues flagged up in terms of the availability of resources from ourselves or the health boards in order to support the timescales that the contractors are working to?
Yes, I think everyone's conscious of the stretch. We are as a whole system. There are programs that are drawing a lot on our capacity. The LIMS and risk diagnostics programs, particularly, that are at a really critical phase of their delivery, are going far faster than you would ordinarily plan for programs of that nature and complexity because of historical reasons. And a lot of our architecture resources kind of dedicated to that work because those are mission critical, or they're delivery critical for the NHS. So to come in at the same time and say, right, we need you to release capacity, or for us to release capacity dedicated and ring-fenced is quite a challenging ask. We're addressing that by being clear about what the expectation is. We ran digital directors through that, and we're also doing that internally within DHCW. So we've established a dedicated architecture team in the strategy directorate under Rhian Rice to work on this. And we are, what's the best way to describe it? I'm very sympathetic to the position that the health boards are in terms of the need to release capacity, but at the same time, we've got very clear ministerial expectations, which is why it's part of our escalation. So we're trying to hold that. At the moment, we are holding the timetables. Yes.
Right. Okay.
On the next is digital medicines. So to look at the governance of medicines, again, brief background. Digital medicines was originally established as the portfolio of 4 programs. I think about 3 years ago now, 2.5 to 3 years ago. Actually, must be more than 3 because it was when I was in Welsh Government. So it was set up as a portfolio of programs. There were 4 programs at that time. Earlier this year, we've consolidated to 2. So one is the EPS program, the electronic prescribing in primary care, and the second is the EPMA, the e-prescribing and medicines administration, which is the secondary care systems that are used. The 2 other programs, one was patient access. So that is how prescribing features appear in the NHS Wales app. That's been absorbed into the NHS app roadmap. And the 4th was the shared medicines record, which is the data layer which resides in the NDR environment. The SMR mainly serves the EPMA systems. So the update is in the next action. This action about the governance structure is Welsh Government's approval of those changes that we have made to consolidate down onto 2 programs. We now report them as 2 separate programs through the PDC major programs categories. We've split. Previously, there were 1 consolidated digital medicines. Now we report as EPS and EPMA. Welsh Government have confirmed that they approve those changes, which is what we're reporting in the first action. Okay. And the second action is to do with the APIs for the shared medicines record. This is part of our future target architecture. All medicines and allergies information is to be transacted through FHIR, Fast Healthcare Interoperability Resources, which is the emerging standard for data messaging and interoperability, mandated by Welsh Government as a foundational data standard for NHS Wales through WHC 2023-018. I learned these. So the FHIR APIs for medicines and allergies are live. We've now got migration activities, firstly to bring existing applications in our own universe across onto those FHIR APIs so that they consume those. So we have to move off all the different repositories that we had for allergies, for example, to use the new SMR allergies. And secondly, to connect the health board-led EPMA implementations to the SMR as they go live. The first, it's really great news, I think, for Cardiff and Vale to have gone live with the first EPMA go live in NHS Wales last week, Thursday, I think, last week. So they haven't gone live across the whole organisation. They've gone live in 2 wards, and then they'll build out across the organisation. Other health boards will follow later on this year. Those EPMA systems are not yet flowing data through the FHIR APIs. The FHIR APIs are up, they're live, they're in production environments, but there's work that the suppliers, the vendors of the systems that are used by the health boards need to do to be transacting through those FHIR interfaces. But we're expecting that to happen in Q3 in September at the moment for the first implementations. So again, we're reporting as complete because our element of the SMR FHIR API is in production and live.
Okay, can't see any hands, so please press on.
All right, and almost finished for me. I'll take a breath in a moment. So number 8 is the Welsh Intensive Care Information System, which we covered in the May actions to establish to reset the governance. This one relates to the workshops, which I mentioned in passing. So these clinical design workshops are taking place. They're being worked through to the plan that they have through into, I think, I'm fairly sure, early August. The action is that they are taking place. So they're because they're clinical workshops. So clearly we try to give as much run-in and as much opportunity and flexibility for clinical stakeholders as we can. So these are running at the moment. And then the final one is agreement of the core milestones on the cancer informatics program. This is the program to decommission CANISC, which is the legacy software that we have, was scheduled to go live at the end of June, and this is a June milestone. There were some concerns around our clinical users community about their readiness to adopt some workarounds. So it was live, but there's a workaround to do with the data migration, which is around about a 3-week period. So we paused the go live in order to resolve that and reach an agreed position across the whole of NHS Wales, which we did manage to do at the end of last week. And so colposcopy has gone live on the 9th, which is 2 days ago, yesterday, sorry. So it went live yesterday, which means that we are about a week and a half late in delivering this key milestone. This is the last milestone to deliver in the CANISC decommissioning program. There's then a separate cancer features. It's not a program because we're handling it as a product approach as part of our shift to a new target operating model in DHCW. So there's then a cancer features roadmap, I suppose we would say, in a product team, which is separate. This is all about closing down CANISC. So we are now able to do that because colposcopy has just gone live.
Oh, it's excellent news. Rowan.
I just wanted to say exactly that, David. We heard about the potential delay in DGNS of the solution going live. I think so. We were cited on it, and just really pleased to see that it's now up and live. I think I owe that team a cream tea, was what I was promising. So
I remember the commitment.
Exactly. So I need to honour that now. Good to hear, Ethan.
And that's me done. So I'll hand over to Sam.
Okay, thanks, Ethan.
Just before Sam comes in, just to give some context for this one, because it's an action where the milestone runs through to the end of March, but we've got proxy measures between now and that date to check we're on track, which is why this one's in grey. The milestone in totality isn't complete, but there is a milestone for the end of Q1 this year. So I'll let Sam update.
Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Thanks, Chair. So we are. Whilst we are waiting for the completion of the IMPS sale to go through, we are progressing with the migrations. And so we're currently progressing at around 2 a week. Obviously, as part of the work post the sale, we will be increasing that up to 4. So it will significantly pick up, but we're on track with the number that we've transitioned across now. So we've got 78 migrated across, and with 115 to go. So we've still got a significant number to go, with the idea being that we will complete that in somewhere between March and May next year. So that's going to be dependent on the sale and the acceleration and a few other things. But effectively, we're on track to complete.
Right. Sam, point of clarification from me. Why we got 24 in Q2, but somewhat less in the other quarters?
So in Q1, we had April and Easter in there, and there is a shutdown. So whenever we agree that there's a time period with practices where for some reason they don't want to work. So it'll be around Christmas, it'll be through holidays potentially. Then there's a time when we ease off on those.
Fine. Okay. Understood. Simon.
Well, it's just the maths, really. I heard you saying you were stepping up to four a week, yes?
Yeah.
Well, that doesn't compute to what the target is in, say, quarter 2, which would be 16, or quarter 3, or quarter 4. So that means we must be doing more than 4 a week in those quarters.
There's a couple where we might do an extra one, but it will all add up to the full, which was 200 and something by the time we've completed.
Okay.
Obviously,
Ruth.
there's a couple
Sorry.
that go into next year.
Yeah.
From so April and May next year, there's a few that fall into that year as well.
Ruth.
Thanks, Sam. And we're confident that rate will sustain at 4 a week as we move through. We haven't saved all our trixiest practices till the end, so that we get through a load, and then the really difficult ones are at the end, or is everything equal difficulty at this point?
So we've done a lot of modelling to do that, to work out how sort of the size, the shape, the complexity of the practices. But also, if you might remember, there are a number of practices who didn't want to move, and so we've had to really work very closely with those practices because they weren't prepared for the move, because it wasn't on their it just wasn't in their plans. They'd hoped to stay. So we've had to do some more work around modelling with that. But yes, our planning is that this is the best shape that we can be in. Obviously, we've got some reliance. We've got some reliance on Optum, or EMIS has now changed its name to Optum, and their readiness, and they've got to move to cloud happening in the next month or so. So over the next couple of months, they're going to move to cloud, which gives us a capacity as well, so that we can increase that cadence. So there are a lot of ducks that are in a row to make this happen, but the amount of modelling and remodelling we've done, we believe we're in the best shape to be able to do that.
Okay, great. Thanks, Sam. Can't see any more hands, so I think we're done on this migration.
Thanks, Sam. So this is the end of the June milestones, Chair. So again, I'll just check with committee members if they're comfortable. Clearly, the colposcopy solution we've marked as complete. We acknowledge there was a 9-day delay from the target date of the end of June, and that's explicit within the evidence column.
Yeah.
But just checking you're comfortable.
Simon?
So just for clarification, because the original cover sheet showed, I think, 2 of the 6 June completed. So we're now saying all of the June milestones are completed, as well as all of the May. Yeah. Oh, brilliant.
Yeah, Simon, that was because of when the papers went out, which is why I wanted to share this live today. Yeah. That's
so
exactly right.
What we're seeing in green here is the totality of the June milestones achieved.
Correct.
Brilliant. Excellent.
Yep.
Okay.
Great. Thanks, Chris.
So I'm just going to go back to the paper, Chair, and just do a quick look ahead to the July milestones. The next PDC meeting's in August, so I want to make sure members are cited on the milestones for July and a sense check of confidence on delivery with those. And then there's just a couple of areas I've indicated as areas we might just want to discuss in terms of areas of potential concern looking ahead. I said that 30 plus of the 42 milestones will be complete by the end of September. So I just want to make sure the committee have a sense of areas we feel might be challenging. So the first 2 in terms of July milestones, if we start with those, section 4.4 of the paper, both relate to the National Target Architecture deliverable.
were you
So
planning to share something at this point? Or just talk
I
through?
was just going to talk it through.
Okay,
There's,
that's fine.
There's just 4,
Okay.
and I will read them out. So the first 2, I'll read the first 2 out because they're both target architecture related. The first milestone, project plan and timetable agreed with the supplier and stakeholders and or directed by Welsh Government. And the second one, Once for Wales target architecture vision statement agreed and or directed by Welsh Government. So I'll just check with Ivan if he wants to comment on those 2 milestones. I know we're not at the end of July, but looking ahead.
No, I think it's good to look ahead to see where we are. We're for the first one, we're on track. I don't think we're anticipating any direction or need for direction from Welsh Government. Welsh Government officials on the project board have indicated that they might well write a letter out to health organisations, but that will be endorsing, I suppose, supporting what's been agreed between us and the supplier and the health organisations about the timetable for the project plan. So that's on track. On the second, the minister, through the new DDAT leadership board arrangements at its first meeting, actually in May, at the beginning of May, confirmed a position, a Welsh Government position on Once for Wales, 3 separate levels for Once for Wales, and the DDAT leadership board is looking at how it can put programmes through that framework in order to assess at what level different programmes should be when they're in the design phase. So rather than being agreed, that work's already been that's already in some ways that milestone's been completed for us by Welsh Government, for which we're very grateful. But more seriously, it shows the joint effort here to to get through the escalation and close constructive working between ourselves and Welsh Government officials. Yep.
Thanks, Ivan. The third of the 4 July milestones is an area we haven't covered in the May or June milestones. So it's section 4 of the improvement plan, data architecture, including the national data resource and data standards. The milestone itself was other NHS organisations enter into a WASPI, a Welsh Accord for Sharing Personal Information, joint data controller agreement, allowing data to flow to national CDR. And now this one does have a couple of dependencies that are listed in terms of working again with Welsh Government. And this was a recommendation. It's referenced in our remit letter. It was also recommendation 26 from the Performance and Productivity Ministerial Advisory Group. So, Ivan, do you want to comment on this one? There is a lot of work in this space at the moment, isn't there?
Yeah, and I'm glad that you highlighted the dependencies, because clearly an agreement requires all parties to agree, and other parties signing a joint data control agreement drafted by DHCW requires them to do that on a consent basis, unless Welsh Government directs them to do so. WASPI is well established. WASPI is the Welsh Accord for the Sharing of Personal Information. I think it's highly regarded. It's long established, and it's had a strong endorsement from the Information Commissioner's office too. The Joint Data Control Agreement for the NDR is a belt and braces approach in some ways, because the data sharing agreements between organizations and DHCW are agnostic to the technology that you use. But in order to establish absolute clarity, we've entered this discussion about trying just to confirm those arrangements. Some health organizations have a different view on the legal basis of the duty of confidentiality and the balance between data controllership and data processor status, which has been worked through at several peer groups over the last 3 weeks or so. So the Digital Directors peer group has reviewed this. The CSIROs and Caldecott Guardians peer group has reviewed this. The chief executives have reviewed this, and the NDR program board has also reviewed this, which gives and there's been some ad hoc meetings too, which gives a flavour of some quite strong views. So we are absolutely committed to trying to reach a collaborative agreement and a collaborative position on this, that everybody, and I should say the DDAT leadership board also has reviewed it last week. So there are a lot of eyes on this, and hopefully by the end of July we will have got to a consensus position. but we can't force anyone to sign up to a joint data controller agreement. Otherwise, it's not an agreement. So we're working through it as collaboratively as we can. I think it illustrates sometimes some of the difficulties and challenges of running big national programs or initiatives on the basis of consent collaboration. But we'll work through it, and with everybody's support, including Welsh Government, we'll get there. I'd say reasonable confidence end of July rather than high.
Okay, thanks. Rowan.
It's really to sort of just reflect on the fact that information governance is a bit dry on occasion, but these views that are held across the system are the parts of the responsible individuals doing their jobs. And if you believe that you are a sole controller and you believe that somebody else doesn't have the right permissions, there is a process you're obliged to go through by law. So we should regard that a lot of this is people taking information governance really seriously. We have really strong capabilities, I believe, in DHCW. And it does feel like there's good progress now, Ivan. So that's really good to hear.
Simon?
I'm assuming this could be one where we reach the end of July and it goes green from our perspective because the outstanding issues that require to achieve completion are dependencies.
Yeah, Simon, I think that is definitely the conversation we will need to have with government colleagues. The dependencies are very clearly listed in the improvement plan for that very reason. So I don't think it would be a surprise if we said, this is where we've got to. However, these are the dependencies. How do you want to, to consider this in terms of complete or not from a DHCW perspective?
Just to be clear, Chris, sorry, I just want to be clear in my mind. Ultimately, Welsh Government provides the authorities for the processing of healthcare data. So, they have the oversight of all of this and the means to make it happen, right?
Chris is nodding. Even?
Yeah, it's a complicated and a very technical environment, and as Rowan says, CSIROs, Senior Information Responsible Owners, Called Guardians, have got specific roles and duties and accountabilities, which they need to respect, and they need to exercise their independent judgment in discharging those responsibilities, just as we do. So I don't think it could go green from our perspective because we've drafted a joint data controller agreement that others haven't signed. It will go green. It's specifically written that other NHS organisations need to have entered into that, although it doesn't, I suppose, technically mandate how many of the other NHS Wales organisations, but we are going for an all Wales coverage. That's the spirit of it. So where we might be, and I hope we're not, and I hope we will get to a position where everybody has signed on a consensual basis. But if we haven't, we'll need to report it as amber, and then we'll need to work with Welsh Government on how we resolve it. Because Welsh Government's policy direction is clearly set out in the remit letter. They've set out actions for Welsh Government to direct health boards to migrate and flow data to the CDR and to the NDR environment. So we've got to get through the legal permissions, and then finally, as Rowan said, yes, we take it absolutely seriously. There are almost 1,000 documented data flows for different use cases into the NDR, into the DHCW environment, which includes the NDR, I guess I would say. And my hope would be that the Joint Data Controller Agreement would enable us to simplify that, managing, I think it's 984 from memory, but managing almost 1,000 documented privacy notices and data flows is an onerous overhead. And I'd very much like to be able to move to a simpler, more streamlined approach to doing that, and this would be an important part of doing it.
Fine. So it's one clarification from me, even. So if we got majority of the health boards signed up, but maybe there was one that wasn't, would we be in a position with Welsh Government's say so to move forward with then starting loading data into NDR, which isn't happening at the moment? Or does the fact that one health board hasn't signed the agreement prevent the others from doing things?
No, it doesn't. So we individual organisations can make their own decisions, and
Okay.
their data would flow to the NDR. What would become difficult, I think, is if we were a data controller in relation to some organisations and a data processor in relation to others. That becomes very complicated. We've got to be one or the other, and we can't be both at the same time in the same NDR environment. It becomes very difficult to manage that. So we are absolutely looking for a I hesitate to say it, for a once for Wales approach.
Okay, thank you.
Shall I just cover the last one? So I've mentioned the last one previously. This is the external stakeholder advisory group that Helen chairs, that met for the first time a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah. So those are the four. So one's already complete. We're ahead of schedule on one. There's the 2 national target architecture milestones that Ivan's suggested are on track. There is then the information governance milestone, which I think is more complicated. And to Simon's point, the remit letter to DHCW, Welsh Government do explicitly say they may be required to mandate health bodies. So that's an action for them. So that's the discussion we would have to have if we're not in a position where there's SIMUP.
Fine. Okay. Thanks, Chris. I think you were clear on the potential risks around that and how we would manage it going forward.
And just to conclude, David, there's a couple of areas that we highlighted at the joint executive team meeting with Welsh Government, which took place on the 27th of June, a couple of weeks ago, as areas of potential future concern in terms of milestone delivery. So I'm going to just raise these here now. I think the committee are well sized on these through the course of committee meetings generally, but the diagnostic programs and the work that's happening to deliver against LIMS and RISP over the next few months are critical. And I will ask if Sam or Ivan want to come in. I'll just quickly cover them all. IMPS and the GP migration. We did flag the IMPS administration impact and how that's changed the migration plan. So that was included. Connecting Care, we highlighted, although we've achieved the milestone of delivering or submitting the business case to Welsh Government, we are acutely aware of the financial position. And Sam updated that we've had confirmation this week of Q1 funding, but clearly we're just coming into the start of Q2. So future funding, I think, is an area that is potential concern. And then finally was the NHS Wales app public launch. We had a milestone for the end of September. The dependency there, as set out in the improvement plan, was that would be agreed and subject to Welsh Government ministerial agreement. That might change. So that's in there as something that could change in the future. So those were the 4 areas that we have discussed with Welsh Government. I think probably remain the 4 areas of concern, but I'll just see quickly if Ivan or Sam want to comment on those.
Yeah, I'll come in briefly on the first and last, LIMS delivery. I think everybody's aware of the challenges and the pressure that there are on the timetable. We're bringing everything that we can to bear on that. The programme board meets monthly. Our executive team takes a weekly update. We review it at our portfolio management board monthly. Chief execs have been reviewing it every month, and Helen is working very closely with chief execs to ensure that we've got clarity. I still feel that the programme under pressure is seeing some really strong collaborative behaviours coming through, but it's got an extremely tough task. We're still in a reasonable, I would say, just about reasonable confidence of delivery. I can't overemphasize how important hitting the timetables that we have in the programme is. And I'm hoping, following conversation last week at the digital directors, that there's going to be a collective message out to the system from digital directors as a group about the importance of holding to the timetable on LIMS. And then on the final one, on the NHS Wales app public launch, we're reporting closely to the Minister personally on the NHS Wales app and where we are. The public launch, which means that a marketing, communication and push really, more than a launch. Is paused, was originally planned to go in September when we drafted this escalation framework, but at the Minister's request is now paused. That doesn't stop users onboarding to the app, and we're ticking up by 15 to 20,000 a month. We're currently, I think, at 460,000 registered users of the app, and that continues to go up from month to month, and will probably accelerate on its own as new features come on board over the next few months.
Okay, just one question from me before I allow Sam to come in on the other two. In terms of LIMS, which month have we got the milestones that you're worried about, Chris, featuring in?
September.
September, okay, fine. Simon?
Sorry, I was on mute. Just a question, Ivan. I'm sure I know this figure. What is the number of people of Welsh residents who have an NHS login? Do we know? Can you remember off the top of your head?
Well, I can remember where it was about 9 months ago, and the big boost was the COVID pass, which really drove up the usage. In 2024, is 1.3 million people had an NHS login already in Wales.
So that's almost, because in terms of a first milestone, that's a key one, isn't it? Is that if you've got an existing login, it's so much easier to sort out your app, signing up to the app. Okay. So we're a third of the way to that total, really.
Yeah.
Over a third.
Yeah. Without even a public launch. Sam, did you want to say anything on Connecting Care or migration?
Just quickly. I think on Connecting Care, so obviously we've been given as Chris mentioned, and I mentioned, a small amount of money for Q1. Obviously, the more we progress through the year, the closer we get to those burning platforms. And so, for us, it's keeping really very close with our Welsh Government colleagues. We understand the challenges in NHS Wales financially, and the fact that the likelihood is that money for this won't come from one pot. That it's something that's wider than just community or primary care or mental health. This is much wider in the system than that. That said, we do know that we have health board colleagues who are really concerned now that the time is ticking on. Procurements take time, implementation takes time, and also they're going to have to be involved in us exiting the current system. So as you can imagine, as the time ticks on, more stress goes into that picture as well. So we're acutely aware of that, and we are having very strong and frequent conversations on it.
Okay. Thank you, Sam. Chris, anything you want to say in conclusion?
Just to conclude, David, in terms of the IQPD meeting with Welsh Government on the 16th of July, the escalation update, the agenda mirrors to a large extent what we've gone through as a committee today. We'll update and get formal confirmation of the May and June milestones. We'll look ahead at the July milestones, and we'll flag any concerns, risks, challenges looking ahead beyond that as well.
Okay, great. Thank you for that, Chris. Any questions before we leave that and move on to AOB? No, great. Okay, thanks. So I've not been notified of any AOB. I'll just pause and see if anybody's got anything they want to raise. Okay, in which case I'll bring this meeting to a close. Thanks everyone for supporting today's meeting. Next meeting's on the 7th of August, which will be a full programme delivery committee, and we'll no doubt get an update from Chris on July, August milestones at that meeting as well. Okay, thanks everyone.